Does it like export or convert into other languages?
No, so Rust is a thing on its own.
Okay.
Rust is basically it's I shouldn't say it's a competitor because although it is in a way, but it sits on the level of C. Okay.
Okay.
Where C, a lot of problems. I mean, I saw a graph from Microsoft, I can't remember how long ago, maybe about a year and a half ago or so, where they did some research and looked at all their bugs and so forth. And they figured out that 70% of all their bugs across all their products, okay, is related to memory issues. In other words, not clearing up memory when you've used it and so forth, dangling pointers and this type of stuff. And they were saying 70% of the bugs are because of that. And that is from C now. Well, you'll have a similar problem with C++, but in C. So what Rust tries to do is to circumvent some of those problems that C, you shouldn't say problems actually though. For general day-to-day coding, all right, you don't always have the time to sit and go through your C code and make sure that you are freeing your memory and so forth. So Rust, you don't have to think about that stuff. You can just code because it's built into the compiler to do these checks for you, and it'll warn you about these things. So Rust is sort of an extension, if I can rather say, of the C way of thinking. And it solves similar problems. It's super fast. It doesn't have a garbage collector, which a lot of people will think, for instance, because it's so memory safe and so forth. Well, it must have a garbage collector to clear up all these dangling pointers, all the memory that it's pointing to and so forth. Well, it doesn't really work that way. At compile time, it checks and makes sure that you're coding correctly and so forth. And it would not build an executable if you made certain mistakes. So it forces you to code in a way that's not going to allow these memory issues and pointer issues to become an issue. Now, on the C side, you could say, well, okay, so that's a problem with C, so we shouldn't be using C, we should be moving over to Rust then. Well, no, not necessarily. C is a brilliant tool for what it is used for. And if that is what you need it for, then that is what you should be using. So one can't say, for instance, a Formula One car, for instance, is better than a rally car. They're two different things. Okay, they've got different use cases. So a direct comparison between the two to say one is better than the other is not fair at all. But to say that the one solves certain problems that you could find with, like, let's say C now, that is true. But it's not really a direct competition, to say the one is better than the other. I mean, if you look at Linux itself, I mean, most of that is written in C and assembler. And when a couple of months ago, I think now, Linus Torvalds was actually saying that he's considering allowing some Rust code to get into the kernel, but over a period of time. There's still tests to be done and so forth. And I think that's absolutely brilliant because C is fast. Rust is very, very fast. And it's memory safe and it's concurrency as well. So if you've got multiple threads and so forth, like I do a lot of C# development as well. And for instance, in C#, if you try and access certain structures from different threads, you're going to have certain concurrency issues. Variables are going to change values unexpectedly and so forth. Now with Rust, that's far less of a problem. You will have the same problem, if we can call it a problem, with C, but that is by design. C was created a certain way for a reason. You as a developer should be aware of the pitfalls that there are, and you should be coding to prevent those things. All right. And if you are aware of them, which any good C coder should be, then it's not really that much of an issue. But in that same sense, Rust is probably quicker to develop with because you don't have to worry about those specific problems.
Yeah.
So it's not. Yeah. They are competitors, but I like both of them, and I understand both of them have got their place. It's not really. You can't really say the one is better than the other in every single situation. It depends what you're referring to.
That's a beautiful explanation. What I'm gonna have to do is take that and merge it into the interview because I haven't even technically started it yet.
Oh, I actually wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
You're asking me, but did we start yet? So,
No,
okay.
I actually,
All right, you just tell me when we started,
yeah.
all right? So.
Well, because I wanted to kind of chat a little bit before, but yeah, I actually read.
Sure.
Sometimes I'll go read the mailing list, and Linus goes off on some of the way that C development has progressed and like how some of the stuff they've done. As I read it, like I don't understand exactly what he's talking about, but in general, I'm like, man, he's got some hostility towards some of the way they've programmed C to function.
Well, the thing is, he's a perfectionist, and grant him that.
Yeah.
For a lot of companies that I've worked at, I've been a consultant for many years, and I was a contractor for many years, and I've also worked permanently at companies for many years. So I've worked at many different companies. And the thing is, what a lot of business people don't understand, all right, is that IT guys, real hardcore IT guys, okay, we are not there to sit and, sit around a table on a Friday afternoon and I don't know, we're different. We have different conversations. We get excited about different things. We have different personalities than the average person that you'll meet in a company. Okay, maybe I can't even think of an example of who, but like take a programmer for instance. Not all of them, but a large percentage of them. They only get along with other programmers. They've all got some social anxiety or something. There's a reason that they are developers. You don't get some guy that, I don't know, I can't even think of a good example, but they're normally more introverted and so forth. So to try and get these people to be part of a crowd and to, sing la 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 with everyone and so forth, that aren't developers, it doesn't really work that well. So Linus is an exact example of a developer like that. So his personality hasn't changed, all right, because that's who he is, but it causes him problems because he's stuck in a situation where he has to deal with people in the outside world, which most developers don't have to, but he has to. So it's very difficult for him to try and put on a different hat and talk to people in a more socially accepted way. He talks to them like how developers will talk to each other. And if one developer messed up badly, you tell the developer, hey, dude, you totally messed up. The security for the system is messed up and you're going to be hacked. Okay? You don't do that. Don't be stupid now. You can say that to another hardcore developer. But, saying it to someone that's not like that, they take it extremely personally. So when I hear Linus said something, or like he showed his middle finger to NVIDIA that time, well, that's him. That's cool. I don't have problems with that.
Yeah, that's
because I see him as a developer trying to make it in the social world. But yeah, so there's definitely a difference between some hardcore IT type people and normal people, if I can call them that, that aren't so hardcore into IT.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about Linus, when I hear about like some of his rants and stuff, and I just admire how spirited he is about, about how his method, his approach to things. And I think a lot of the success of Linux can be attributed to his approach. So I don't think it's like a negative
most
thing.
Definitely. Yes. No, I mean, I did read the other day that Linus is working on something like 1% of the kernel at the moment. But he's still, he's checking code and everything. He's still very, very busy. But he's not like 50% of the code is not, sitting on his desktop. He's doing very little of the actual coding nowadays. But he started this whole paradigm, this whole way of thinking, and the rules that the developers must be governed by that writes the kernel. And now there's a lot of people that think similar to him, that work with him and so forth. So you can allow these other guys to sort of take over and so forth. Because, I mean, imagine if he was fully in control and something had to happen to him tomorrow. What is going to happen to Linux in the future? We got a big problem. So it's a good thing to spread this knowledge amongst other developers. But he's still got a very strong hold on what gets done. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, if you look at, I was just reading something on OpenBSD today. because I'm very interested in BSD as well. And what do I want to say to you now? What was I reading on OpenBSD? And we were talking about Linux. Sorry, my memory goes bang like this often.
Oh, that's cool.
We were talking something about. I read something that they said something. What was it? Oh yes, yeah. They actually have a foundation for sorry, that's for FreeBSD, not OpenBSD. They have a foundation, and it looks like people are actually voted in into the management every 2 years. A new vote is held, so you can be kicked out or kept in. Now, in a way, that's also good. I like that as well, because they're actually looking at people that can actually look after the code. They're not like, best friends and best friends is great. Make a Linux distro, that's beautiful. But I mean, when you're starting to talk on certain things where very big companies are basing millions and millions and millions of dollars on this operating system, they're relying on it to work. For whatever reason, maybe they want to fly to Mars or whatever the case may be, the kernel must work, all right? So you need people that are out there that actually make sure that things are done properly. And that's what Linus does beautifully, I think. He is not a people person, and he's not pretending to be, and we shouldn't think that he is a people person, so we shouldn't treat him like one.
Yeah, I agree.
A normal CEO in a company is far more a people person than what Linus is. But I mean, the contribution that he's made in the computing world is much higher than a lot of CEOs of big IT companies out there.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and do my intro now, because we kind of got the interview started backwards. I might just post it as is. So, but yeah, let me go ahead and do my intro, because I need to do it.
Well, you're welcome to do that as well. You could just, I don't know how you do it, but maybe you can just say, like, the plans was to have it, but we kicked off, and he said, I don't know.
Just started chatting, yeah. Welcome to the LibreQuest podcast. My name is Matt, and this is episode 47. I'm joined by a 30-year developer, Linux user, and content creator, Dean from IT and the likes on YouTube, and yeah, that's my intro. So, but we can continue the conversation now.
Yeah.
So yeah, you.
Well, yeah. So.
Yeah, but yeah, I totally agree on the Linus thing, and I kind of feel the same way about. I know that, like I was saying to somebody the other day about Stallman, is that there's, like, my kind of view on Stallman is there's people who don't like him. And there's people, they don't like him at all. There's people who support him, but but it seems like nobody really likes him. Like there's maybe people that
feel
support
the same
him.
way.
Yeah,
yes.
It's kind of a weird thing with Stallman.
I've only made one video, all right, where I mentioned anyone in particular, and it happened to be him, and I didn't want to get too deep into my opinions about him, but I did want to say to people, like, hey, it's okay to make up your own mind, right? Don't listen to what everyone tells you, like, we're all into open source and all this stuff, and so is he, so therefore he's a good guy. That is not my opinion. I don't think he's the greatest guy out there, but that doesn't hold me back from, using tools and so forth that he was involved in creating. I mean, if you really wanted to go so far and say, well, just because I disagree with someone's politics, I'm not going to, or they, the type of person they are, so I'm not going to use their product. Well, then, maybe you disagree with, communism. Then why are you using products that come from China, for instance? There's a point where you got to cut it off, and you got to decide, what do you get out of it, and what do you lose in the battle? And I think for us normal people that are using, the GNU utilities and so forth, I don't think that should really affect us. You can have your opinion about them. I suppose everyone can have opinions about everyone, and that's fine. But if someone has a different opinion than you, as long as they thought their opinion out. I say this about a lot of things in life. You might be different to me. You might have a different idea than me, but at least have thought your idea out, and then I have respect for it. But if you just go along with the crowd, and then want to make an argument about what you think the crowd thinks. That doesn't hold much more water with me. It's have your own ideas, but at least think them through, and then have a reason for your ideas. So yeah.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think, I don't know. It's quite a dynamic with Stallman specifically, but it's the whole the whole thing is a bit confusing. But I think a lot of people agree with the ideas that Stallman has. But in regard to software freedom, respecting software and that sort of thing, and the work that he began in, I guess it would have been 1983, 84, somewhere around there.
Sure, I don't even know, but yes, it's been ages ago.
Yeah, ages ago. So switching off that topic, you do development, and you had told me a little bit earlier what languages you use primarily, and I was wondering if you could list those again, like your development languages that you use.
Oh, okay. Well, there's quite a list here. Let me go to my website quickly to remind myself of everything.
Yeah, and what was your website again?
It's dimension15.co.za, so it's dimension15.co.za. Like I said, that was my first Angular website I ever created. Put it this way. When I started developing, I wrote my first program in 1986. It was on a ZX Spectrum, I wrote in BASIC back then. It was some silly little thing where you do little math quizzes, and every time you get the question right, then the screen changes colors, and that's what I could do back in 1980. I don't even think it was 86. It might have been 84 now that I think of it. But and I was fiddling around and so forth, but nothing too serious. And then towards the end of schooling, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to be. My father was a computer engineer, and he got me interested in electronics and computers and so forth. I would often go to work with him and help him. Back then, in the late 70s and so forth, he was working with a company called ICL, which I don't think they exist now anymore. But he was working on mainframes and so forth. So I was interested in computers and electronics and so forth. But come the end of my final year at school, I was choosing, or I wanted to choose between either marine biology or astrophysics, and I couldn't decide which one. So I decided to do my military training instead. Back then, you didn't have a choice. We had to go. If you didn't go, you'd either have to have proof that you went to a university or something, and then when that is finished, you've got to go. Alternatively, you get a letter from your work or whatever telling you that, okay, you don't have to go this year. But the government was saying, it was forced. It was conscription. You had to go to the army, if we can call it that. And so I thought I'll take that, and then in there I'll decide, what am I actually going to do? And then I started working at a place. I was a head guard at a place called the Software Depot, where they wrote the software for a jet that they had in South Africa called the Cheetah. And there was an American lieutenant, one of the programmers that was working on this software, and I walked past him the one day, and we all knew each other. And I just made this joke, and I said, what you're writing is easy. And I walked off. And he then turned around, he came and he sat next to me in my office. I had a little computer there. Didn't have use for it, but I had a computer. And he said, okay, watch me. And he sat by me for 2 days, and he wrote a program in Pascal. And he told me, okay, Mr. Know-it-all, now you go and write it. And then 3 days later, I'd rewritten it. And he said, okay, the choice is made, you go and be a programmer. Nice. And that's then what I ended up going and doing. But so you're asking me about my languages. So I basically started, my very first language I ever used was therefore BASIC. But when I really started coding, it was Pascal and assembler. And the reason why I actually did assembler was back in those days, we had CGA color. And if I remember correctly, it was only 4 colors, if I remember correctly. But Borland, the company Borland existed back then as well, and they had something called a BGI driver, which allowed for 256 colors. So of course we got the monochrome, so the Hercules graphics cards and so forth, CGA, and so it moves up, and we finally ended up with 256 colors. But there wasn't a driver from Borland available for Pascal to use, so that's why I started playing with assembler. So I wrote my own color driver. So when everyone else was using 4 colors or 16 colors in Pascal, I was already using my 256 because of my assembler knowledge. And then from assembler and so forth and Pascal, I moved over to C++, Borland C++ to be specific. And then I also moved over to Delphi, and really enjoyed Delphi. But then I had to make a decision, a business decision. In South Africa, what is going to be more supported in the future? Visual Basic from Microsoft or Delphi? And it hurt me, and it still hurts me to say this, but I chose Visual Basic. So I thought there's more of a future in that, career-wise, in South Africa. And it turns out I did make the right decision there. But so I did a lot of Visual Basic development. Started with the Visual Basic version 3, and I did every single version since then. From normal up VB6 and then into VB.NET as well. But I tried to do as little in VB.NET as humanly possible. But while I was doing the Visual Basic stuff, I wanted to, what I considered, keep myself a more pure programmer. And so therefore I still did C++ at the same time. And a lot of companies where I got hired, because I had Visual Basic on my CV, I often ended up having to write C++ stuff for them because none of the other programmers could. They all just knew Visual Basic. So there we got Basic, then Pascal assembler, x86 assembler, C++, Visual Basic. And then in approximately, 2001, I think it was, I started with C#, and I started making big moves to try and get away from Visual Basic. Then from C#, I still do C# today, but from C# was probably my main language for the 20 years since then. But if all the other things that I've been working in is, like I said earlier, there's PHP. Then there's all the frameworks, for instance. So you got ASP.NET, MVC, .NET Core, and all that kind of stuff. I've done all that. For web development, my favorite at the moment is Angular. I've looked a little bit at Flutter, but I prefer. So Flutter and Angular aren't direct competitors. There's more Ionic and Flutter. And so I do Ionic as well for mobile development. And I've also done Xamarin for mobile development. Xamarin Forms in specific, not just pure Xamarin. I prefer Ionic for mobile development. But yeah, I would say nowadays, if I have any say in it, then 100% of my time will be spent in Rust. But for practical purposes and for employment and so forth, I probably write 25% C# and the rest is Rust. And then when I do get to do websites and so forth, then it's your normal web technology, so your JavaScript and CSS and HTML and that type of stuff. My favorite languages that I've ever worked in would probably be, I did Clarion as well at a stage. But I would say that my favorite ones is Pascal, x86 assembler, C++, Rust, and I'll throw C# in there because it did me good over the years. But if I could choose, then I'd rather spend all my time in something like C, Rust, and assembler. That's the kind of places I like playing around with. It's in there, yeah.
Wow, that's an amazingly, that's an incredible list. And you told me that you've done 30 years professional development, but you've developed a lot longer than that. And so I actually come from what used to be called Southwest Africa. It's now called Namibia. Okay. It's just it's a neighboring country just to the northwest of South Africa. It's almost the size of South Africa, but when we moved from Namibia to South Africa, I think that was in 1983 or 84. I can't remember now. I think 83. But when we moved from there, the entire country's population was 1.1 million people. Wow. Now, to give you an idea, Johannesburg in South Africa at that stage had almost 2 million people. So a country almost the size of South Africa had half the amount of people as one city in South Africa. So growing up there was really wonderful. I grew up playing in the bush and so forth, which people nowadays living in cities and so forth. And the dangers nowadays, you can't just go and play in the bush, something could happen to you. But back in the 70s,
I could go and play in the bush. We were in the bush constantly, up in the mountains and stuff. We would gather, scorpions and all sorts of things. We would play around with everything. But what I'm getting at too is talking about from way back. So I did play a little bit of Atari games back in the 70s, but I myself didn't have an Atari. A friend of mine had. We also didn't have television back then. South Africa got, I think in 76 or 77, they got television. Namibia, I think they were going to get television in 1982, but I think it only happened in 83, if I remember correctly. But so we didn't really have anything. One friend had an Atari. There was no TV. So we were outside playing. But that was my first introduction to, if we can say, a computer. It was an Atari. And then from then coming over to South Africa, my dad actually brought home one day a ZX81. It's a tiny little Mickey Mouse computer. And I had that for, I can't even remember how long. It wasn't very long. But I think he saw very quickly that it's not going to do the job. And then he got the ZX Spectrum with 16 kilobytes of RAM. All right. Wow. And I saved up money, pocket money and so forth, and I could finally upgrade my 16 kilobytes to 32 kilobytes. And I really thought I've got some real special computer here. But later, I think the last one that was released was 128 kilobytes, if I remember correctly. But that was a few years later. But then after that, I still had my ZX Spectrum, and then as the years progressed, the guys started getting into, the Amiga, the Commodores, and all those. I can't remember all the console names and stuff anymore. But I know my friends had the Amigas, brilliant computers back then. My one friend's father had the Archimedes. I think it's the Acorn Archimedes. That was a RISC processor. That was extremely fast. A couple of years later, when I ended up with my 386 DX40. We did a comparison. There's a package called CorelDRAW, and back then I was on version 2.1, if I remember correctly. Now this is in the 90s now already, early 90s, and there was a rendering or a vector of a chameleon's head, and my friend's father that had this Archimedes. He had a program that could also read CorelDRAW files. So what we did is, on my computer, on my 386 DX40, I opened this head of this chameleon, and it'll be filled in, it'll be drawn, it'll be rendered, and I would time it, and it took 36 seconds. And I thought, wow. My 386, wow, amazing. Yeah. And then I took the file to him, and we put it on his computer, and 6 seconds. Exactly 6 times faster than my 386 DX40. Now that is right when the DX40 was available here. Yeah. So it was brand new, and he had that machine for like 2 years already, and it was 6 times faster than my DX40.
And what machine? What machine was his?
It was an Archimedes, and I think it's from Acorn. The company was called Acorn.
And you said it was a RISC system.
It was a RISC, yeah.
Yeah. That's impressive. That's crazy impressive. Especially.
Yes, it was ridiculous. It was amazing. Yeah. But what was also very interesting is the operating system. Like now, well, I mean, nowadays it won't fly. But back in those days, you'd have your, you'll have a sound blaster, for instance, that's got, well, I don't know if that's a good example, a little bit of memory on it, and a video card's got a little bit of memory on it, and so forth. But typically, it's just using the system memory. But what that operating system could do is, let's say, for instance, he was working on a spreadsheet, for instance, and then we would come along, and his sons, 2 sons with their Amigas, they would tell me, but you must see this demo on my dad's computer. And then they go to the dad and they say, please show us this demo. And then he say, well, it's a 256 color demo and so forth, and the video card doesn't have enough RAM. All right, to be able to play this 256 color demo. But he has these sliders in the operating system at the bottom where like a taskbar would be. He had these sliders on there, and you could then, as you move these sliders, you're actually giving RAM to different components of the system. So you could just drag the video card slider up a bit, and then it'll have access to more RAM. It was amazing.
Yeah,
we're
crazy.
talking, like, I don't know, maybe 90. 92 maybe, around there. It was an amazing concept back then. You could just drag these sliders and give more RAM to. It was amazing.
Yeah. I want memory sliders on my system.
Yeah, I'd love it as well. Especially if it is connected to the internet and I can just drag down terabytes of memory. It would be amazing.
Right. That would be revolutionary. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, totally.
So I think it's awesome that you're from South Africa. That's so cool. I don't know. I'm intrigued by South Africa. I'm just intrigued by language in general. I love to learn different languages and stuff. And you mentioned you were required to do military, and I was wondering is it really like in the movies where you had to speak Afrikaans?
Well, it's not. Yeah, are you referring to just in general in South Africa or in the military itself?
Yeah, in the military, because I've seen some movies. It's like they're like broad Afrikaans.
So yes, in the military, you had problems if you couldn't speak Afrikaans because the government back then was what was it called, the National Party? National Party, but they were basically mostly Afrikaans speaking. And therefore, the military being obviously a government institution, most of them were also Afrikaans speaking. So if you couldn't speak Afrikaans, you would get in trouble a lot. But it wasn't really that much of an issue for us because we all spoke Afrikaans anyway. I mean, even coming from Namibia to South Africa, there we also spoke Afrikaans. So it's not like I'd say nowadays, I do come across English-speaking South Africans that have been in this country for decades that don't. My own sister is not very good at speaking Afrikaans, for instance. And I mean, I'm 50 and she's 47, so she's had the opportunity. But it's just they move in sort of different circles, and their friends are not necessarily Afrikaans. And like she's from Johannesburg. Johannesburg is a very English type area. Where I'm in Pretoria, where it's far more Afrikaans. But the South Africa in general, you typically have to be able to speak Afrikaans. It's sort of, because of the historical reasons, I mean, that Afrikaans was the spoken language for so many years amongst all the different cultures so that everyone can speak to each other. Now you can get away with not being able to speak Afrikaans depending on where you live. Yeah. You won't do so well, for instance, in Pretoria, where I live. It's better to know Afrikaans. But you're not forced to learn it or anything. But yes, if you do your military service and back then and you couldn't speak Afrikaans, you would get what we called an OPPI. OPP, how can I spell that? OPPIE or OPPY. Now, it stands for something. I'm not going to go into too much details, but it means to be totally, effed up. Okay, that's what it means. Yeah. And so what happens is to you in the army, if you do something wrong or whatever the case may be, the chances are very good that they're going to do that to you. And if they think like maybe that you're going to do push-ups for 2 hours, okay, if they think you're not going to learn your lesson from that, or you come in with an attitude, and maybe you're very good at doing push-ups and you can do it for 2 hours, then they're just going to tell you, I mean, they do this in military all over the world, but they're going to tell you to go stand under a tree in the shade and enjoy yourself. And then everyone else they're going to give this OPI to. So you don't want to cause trouble, because then your own buddies are going to come and beat you up because they had to go through this hell for a couple of hours. Yeah. But Afrikaans was sort of the spoken language back then. Yeah. Today a little bit less, but it's still very much in use. Very much.
Well, that's it. I usually listen to a lot of, like, if I'm learning a specific language, I listen to a lot of music, and I really enjoy Die Hoevels Fantasties and
yes,
Van Gogh, and those guys, and Bok van Blurk. I like his stuff as well.
We just call him Bok.
Bok, yeah.
Actually, so what happens is a lot of our Afrikaans singers, because the Afrikaans community is very, very tightly knit and so forth. So, we're very much into, like, if someone's a little bit older than you, you call them auntie or uncle, oom and tannie. It's respect. It's not as much as it was a couple of decades ago, the young people nowadays, but a lot of kids that are still brought up very, very Afrikaans. They still have that respect and so forth. But then, by the same token, even if you're not a family member, but people want to, like, let's say you're a very good singer, for instance, they won't call you, Bok van Black. You just Bok. Okay. They call you in the first name. That's what I'm trying to get to. It's a kind of a way of saying that we're so close to this person, we can refer to them on their first name. But then you'll say, but why can't they do that to older people as well? Because a lot of older people, they try and make a point of it. No. You're not that young anymore. You are now 40 or 50 or whatever. You can't call me, uncle anymore. But it's just a sign of respect. You do it anyway.
Interesting, yeah. What does bok mean? What does that mean in Afrikaans?
Well, the actual word bok would be a buck.
Okay.
Like an antelope.
Okay.
And so a lot of Afrikaans names, for instance, are normally associated with something. Not necessarily something as direct as like a sock or something like that, but something that's got more meaning. And like a bok is one of them, where guys will have that name. Afrikaans people, they came through a lot of their own strifes and so forth from the 1800s, and they went through a lot of stuff. And they also, the farmers and in the bush and so forth. So a lot of the names and so forth are associated with their backgrounds. And
Yeah, I've done some reading on the Boer War and some of the stuff that happened in that and happened as a result of that, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't know is that some a lot of Afrikaans people were stuck in concentration camps. They had in the Second World War. It happened to the Afrikaans people here as well. By the Brits. The British stuck them in concentration camps, the women and the children. But then again, what a lot of people don't know is in Southwest Africa, Namibia, there's a indigenous tribe they called the Hereros, and they went through something similar. They were also stuck into like concentration camps and stuff. So the sadness has gone all over the world. It's terrible. It's just terrible.
Yeah, I've seen some of the photographs from around that time and how people were treated as just disturbing. It's very disturbing.
It is disturbing, but that's sort of wiped out of history. Those things don't really come up in conversation and so forth, except amongst like Afrikaans speaking to Afrikaans. But even then, people sort of don't really talk about those things anymore.
It's tragic. All right, let's switch over to your Linux history. I'm interested into how you were first introduced, how you became a Linux user developer.
Yeah, so I can't remember exactly when I first. Okay, so obviously back in the 90s, I mean, there was no such thing as internet and so forth. I think internet really only became big in South Africa in the second half of the 90s, like 96, 97, around there. But even then it was quite small. So, I mean, you'll also hear, I try and say Linux, but I'm actually trained to say Linux.
Yeah,
and the reason
cool.
for that is because that back then, I mean, we had no videos or anything to listen to and look at. Okay, so it was all written down. It's all documentation. So, I mean, I've never seen the word Linux before. So, based on my knowledge and the way I pronounce words and so forth, and a lot of South Africans would, Linux is the word that you would come up with, because you don't hear anyone saying the word Linux. You can only read it.
Right.
It's like, for instance, Ubuntu. And I see a lot of guys say Ubuntu, but it's Ubuntu. But I know that because that's the word from here. All right.
Yeah.
But they obviously won't know because they just read these things, or they hear Ubuntu from another guy that only knows Ubuntu. So I don't get too stuck up with you're saying it wrong or whatever. It's fine. It doesn't matter.
I was going to say that Ubuntu used to actually include a video with Nelson Mandela speaking about the word and its origin and what it means, how it means community and giving care to others and that sort of So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is what it means. So yeah. But I must say, so I'll get back to the Linux thing now, but I must say that like this Ubuntu, I almost said Ubuntu myself now. This Ubuntu word, you don't actually really ever hear it being used, by the people here. It's not part of the language or anything, as such. So, what was his name? Mark Shuttleworth. He chose it for some reason. He probably did some research, found this, and used it. Now they did at a stage, like on television. They were, I can't remember, a couple of years ago. They would say a few things, and Ubuntu would come up into it, but then it died again. So it's not really a majorly used word, but it is a local word from here. I'm not even sure if it's a Zulu word, or I'm not really sure. That's the other thing here with languages. You do have big separations in the groups. Let's call them tribes. If we go back far enough, they were tribes. Okay, but nowadays everyone sort of understands certain languages, like Zulu, for instance, and Sotho. They all sort of understand each other's words to a degree. So they can all talk to each other. When I say they, I'm referring to those that can actually talk an indigenous language. Now, a lot of white people can't. My father, for instance, he grew up on a farm, and he could speak Zulu absolutely fluently. Wow. And his mother, my granny, she was beyond ridiculous when it came to speaking Zulu and so forth. But most white people don't really speak a black language, if I can call it, because of history. We've never needed to. Back in the day, they would speak Afrikaans, and nowadays, basically, it's all business and so forth. So everyone is speaking English. So you'll find like Afrikaans, for instance, like I said in Pretoria, Afrikaans. It's best to know Afrikaans, or even Cape Town and in the Free State and so on. Know your Afrikaans. But when it comes to business, even Afrikaans people speak to each other in English. Because it's just it's sort of the spoken. When it comes to business, that's a language that everyone speaks. Yeah, but okay, so sorry, I went off on a side thing there. No, go ahead. You're asking about my Linux knowledge, or how I got involved in that. Yes. So back then, so obviously I was playing with DOS, and then a while later Windows 3 or 3.1 is the first one I used, and then 3.11. But around about that time, because I think Linus started working on I think the first official release of Linux was 1993 or 1994. And it is more or less that time, 93, 94, when I got to know about it. I don't know how, because like I say, we didn't have the internet. There were bulletin boards, BBSs, but I don't think I got that info from there. So I have no idea how I got to hear about it initially. But then I started playing around with it. The first distro that I got was actually Red Hat, and I had to buy it. Now, when I say buy, you're obviously paying only for the packaging and so forth. But I mean, I couldn't download it from anywhere like we can today. I actually had to go into a shop and buy it, and it was Red Hat. If I remember correctly, my first one, and I played around with it, and like all of us got stuck and got mad and whatever, and leave it for a week, and then I'm back at it again. And the first graphical interface I used, if I remember correctly as well, was what is that? It's Enlightenment. Yeah, Enlightenment. Nice. Yeah, that's the first one I worked on or played around with, and that was also I don't know, Enlightenment maybe about 96, 97, around there. And then, but the thing is, I was still very much in the Microsoft world. So my main operating system was Windows. Then, as the years progressed, nowadays everyone's using VirtualBox and so forth. But before that, what was that one that everyone was using? It was VMware Workstation. Yeah. Yep. So I would run Linux a lot inside that. And every now and then when I hear something new, well, okay, that's the other thing also. Basically, no one knows Linux, well, I suppose worldwide, but like in South Africa, you can go 20 years without meeting anyone that knows Linux. They'll know the name, but they've never used it. They don't know that there's such a thing as different distros. Telling them like, oh no, I'm on Arch, not on. There, I said it. By the way, I am on Arch though.
Nice.
but like trying to explain the difference, for instance, between Arch and Ubuntu. Like it's foreign concepts, or that you can choose your desktop environment. It's completely foreign to most people because they understand Windows, and that's it. But anyway, so I can't remember what we were saying now. But moving on with Linux and so forth. So I try to keep myself going with it all the time, and but in a virtual machine. And then what is it? Mono became a thing. So I don't know if you know Mono. It's sort of a .NET framework for Linux, and me coding in C# at that stage, I thought I got to try this out. And the IDE I used back then was called Mono Develop, and I played around in that, and hey, I was amazed because C# worked on Linux thanks to Mono. I mean, it couldn't do WinForms and stuff like that, but I wasn't writing stuff like that. I was writing DLLs and stuff. So I thought it was just amazing. And then, as time progressed, I was fiddling with it. I would always fiddle. And then because the internet became bigger and bigger, and then you could start getting information and, getting more and more excited. And then a few years ago, I became ill, and so I couldn't work. And I was sort of a bit anti, let's say, everything that I've been through. And programming, software development fell under that as well. I said, never again. I'm changing my life entirely. I want none of those things in my life again. And definitely nothing to do with Microsoft and Windows. I was tired of that world. And then a few months later, I was thinking, but what am I good at, and what do I really enjoy? And it took me back to programming and computers and just IT. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take this opportunity and I'm going to make a complete switch. I'm going 100% Linux, and that's it. And that's what I did. Wow. Every computer in my house, I just formatted, and boom, I stuck Linux on. And now I had installations, on bare metal. It wasn't always in virtual machines, but it was normally like, my main desktop was whatever version of Windows. And then on a laptop, that will have some Linux distro on it. Whatever the flavor of the day was. I mean, also, so something I must mention, back in the 90s as well, I fiddled around a lot with OpenSUSE.
Okay.
See, there also, everyone says SUSE, and I just know it as SUSE because I didn't hear the word when I was using it.
It works for me.
So to me, it was a SUSE, yeah. And then the other one that I used back in the day as well was, it got renamed to Mandrake, I think it was.
Yeah, Mandriva. Yeah.
Mandriva, there we go. Mandriva. Yep. Yeah. So I played around with that as well. Yeah.
Heck yeah, that was my first distro.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed that actually. I was quite happy with that. But so that's really when I decided to make the switch. It's not the 100% switch. So like I say, I've enjoyed playing with Linux since the 90s, early 90s. No later than 94, 95 at least, probably 94 around there. And then I've made a permanent switch about 2.5 years ago or so. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. But I must say, I'm very sad about the current state of Linux.
That was going to be my next question. Like your opinion of the Linux desktop experience today.
So I think the desktop experience is absolutely marvelous. Well, obviously we're talking which distros and which desktop and whatever, but I mean, if you narrow it down to what you want, and I think it's so capable. Now, one must understand that Linux was created by and for techies, for technical guys, all right? And this is sort of, I won't say it held the desktop environments back. It's just, I think that, like, let's take Linus, for instance, himself and his core teams back in the day. That wasn't really their aim, all right? They were just looking at a kernel, and then everything must be stuck on top of that. And then you get, the guys that had their own little projects that they would come on and start adding, like, KDE, I think that's also from the 90s, if I remember. They started, and like Enlightenment and so forth. These were things that were added on, but by small teams of guys that were doing their own little thing. And they would come up with environments that they wanted, that they liked. It was for them. And this is the great thing about Linux distros versus Windows. If you don't like the Windows UI, the look and feel. I mean, I was playing with Windows 11 today, and I call it Windows 10.1, which it's not really okay, but that's a different subject.
No, go ahead.
So
that's interesting.
No, so I think the Linux desktop experience is amazing. Okay, anything that I want to do, I can do. Now the thing is, you can say, okay, what about gaming? All right, like with Steam. Now, I'm not a gamer anymore. I played games up until the age of 44, and I just stopped dead the one day. And since then, I haven't played again. So I'm not too worried about gaming on Linux. I like the idea that it's getting better, and I hope it really gets massive. But that doesn't bug me too much. But all the other things, the things that I'm interested in, everything works on Linux. So I think the desktop experience is absolutely amazing. But now this is the little but that worries me about Linux's future. So something I've said for a long time. I hope I don't get shot by this by people in my future. But the sad thing about engineers, for instance, have the exact same problem. They want to go and reinvent the world. Or some scientist. They know if they can just do the following, they'll find a cure for X or whatever. But then the CEO and the board of the company he works with comes back and says, now you've got a limit of $1 million for the year, and he knows he needs 5. All right, so he's held back. All right, because business is telling him what to do, because they're worried about the margin, the bottom, how much do things cost and so on. They worry about that. Whereas the scientist, doesn't really worry about that. He just wants to solve the problem. He wants to find a cure or whatever. So it's sort of, from the scientist's perspective, the business is sort of holding him back. Okay, so we have a similar situation when it comes, for instance, to software development. So, I mean, many projects that I've worked on, then they ask you, we've got the following problem, and how long will it take to fix or to write something for it? And you say, okay, 2 months. And then they say, or $100,000, all right? Yeah, let's say $100,000. They say, nah, we've only got 60. They say, okay, I'll make it happen, but you can't really. It's not enough money, which means you don't have the time to do it, and so forth. So you don't really invest properly into it. And I think we're having a similar problem with Linux and business. So we've always wanted business to take Linux more serious, all right? Which they now have, all right? Linux is used by the biggest companies in the world. I mean Microsoft. Remember when, what was it, Ballmer was saying about Linux is a cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it wasn't for Linux, Microsoft probably doesn't have a future, with Azure and so forth. And so a lot of big companies are getting involved in Linux, which we would initially think, oh, that's brilliant. We finally got the big boys investing in it and so forth. But the problem is now they are guiding its direction, not the technical guys that actually sit and play with it and made it happen. So it's like this programmer that he knows he needs 2 months to write something well, but his boss tells him, some project manager tells him, look, you've got 3 weeks, make it happen. You're going to write bad software. So I'm thinking that it's a good thing that business is now more involved in Linux, along with the Linux Foundation and so forth, but that's another conversation. But so in a way, it's a good thing that they're getting involved, because then more people are using Linux, big companies are involved, so big money is involved, and so they can spend more time on developing Linux. But then the bad side comes in. It's those companies that decide what Linux is going to be like, and us, the actual people that use it daily, and the developers, the core developers, they have less and less of a say of the direction in which it's going. So getting the big guys involved is great, but it's also not great.
I'm kind of curious. Do you think that the provisions that the GPL provide? Do you think that's some sort of as far as the direction, even if that continues in one way, do you think that is provides some sort of like safety net for?
No, actually, I don't think so. I mean, if you just look at it from the top, okay, sure. So they can't make certain things pay for, and it's got to be open source, etc. So in that sense, yes, but that doesn't change that some big organizer, some big company can come in and say, look, we don't want to support System D, all right? And we're a big company, you've got to throw it out. We don't want to, we want to use Red Hat, but we don't want System D in it. Get rid of it. They're going to get rid of it because these guys need to get paid. They need to get their salaries and so forth. So the GPL doesn't affect that at all. So they're going to go and make the change. They're going to get rid of System D as an example. They're going to get rid of that. And everything is still covered by the GPL. And whoever this big companies that said they must do it is going to be happy. And they didn't break any laws or anything. Yeah. So in that sense, the GPL is not going to help. So the GPL really just helps in making sure that people can keep their eyes on the code, and if they want to make changes, they can take that code and go ahead and make changes.
So it's your concern that like a big company could have that kind of an influence, and where some program, some code may not get maintained how it would otherwise if it was being implemented,
Yes, because I think there's an influence. Yeah, and it's typically an influence due to financial reasons. So, I mean, if we could all just sit back, we don't need a salary, and we could all sit and play around in the kernel code all day. Well, that'll be great, okay? But that's not the lives or the world that we live in. You got to have an income and so forth. At the moment you say things like, well, I need an income, and my time is spent working on some software package, let's say it's the kernel, and I need some kind of remuneration for that. The moment that's the situation, boom, you are open to be influenced, because someone can turn around and say to you, okay, your package per month is, I don't know, $10,000. I don't know. Sorry, I'm not from the United States, so the 10,000 might be a bit high. I don't know, but let's do a nice round number. So you might be getting 10,000 a month, and then this big organization comes in and tells you, well, we're going to give you 15,000. Okay, if you make this little change, which you don't really want to do, but we'll give you 15,000. And then it's this whole way up where your heart lies here, but you do want the money, right? And some guys are going to say, I don't care about the money, I'm going to stick to this, and I'm going to keep it pure. But even just that one guy that decides, no, I actually want that 15 grand, not necessarily because he wants money. He's got his own personal issues. Maybe somebody's in hospital and he needs money to help them or something. But their influence starts coming into it. And I see it. I see the influence. There's things happening, which makes me nervous. Yeah, I don't know enough about what is exactly happening in the kernel. I don't work on the kernel. I've gone so far as to download and look at some of the code as if I knew what's going on. Yeah, right. Not really. Those guys are good that writes that. But I can make comments on certain things and so forth. But yes, I'm scared of that influence from big companies. And so we want to deal with big companies because we want to show them how amazing Linux is. And then when they say, yes, we want your stuff, then we get nervous. Yeah. That's sort of where I am. It's like, hey, look at this amazing thing, but don't use it. Just say it's amazing.
Yeah, that's always
just admit to the fact that it's better than what you're using at the moment.
Yeah, that's all we want is an admission, not adoption.
That's all.
Yeah, that's kind of always been in the back of my mind. It's like if Linux became like the adopted choice for OEMs and they start shipping it out, does that fundamentally I mean, it kind of by necessity has to fundamentally change the way that the experience is going to go. I mean, like look at like Chromebooks or Android.
Yes.
You know, those are one of my two of my favorite examples because they're not what I would think of as a Linux or a Linux, right? And because it's not a system that's completely open for me to do anything that I would like to do on my system. And so, that's all, I kind of understand the concern, where you're coming from there. And just, we'll see how it plays out over.
But that's why I'm sort of, I've been interested in what was it, FreeBSD I haven't done much with it, so I can't really get in depth in it, but I have played around with it for a few years, and then different flavors of it. Like what was that one? Ghost BSD.
Oh, that's
I think there's a Midnight BSD as well, if I remember. Now, which is the last one I played with? It was Ghost, but you get the XFCE version as well, and I use XFCE. Strangely enough, actually, I was thinking about it today. Where did I see? Oh, it was Windows 11. Looking at its UI. And I was just thinking, like eye candy and everything, and I've used Cinnamon, the desktop, for instance, and you make changes and make it look the way you want it and everything. It's all cute and pretty, and then I find that these things actually irritate me because, like, I want to work now. I've got work to do, and like a window, maximizing from the bottom left corner up and filling up the screen, and then when I minimize it, it goes down again like on a Mac. That's pretty. It's really pretty. I have no issues. But for me, when I'm actually working, it sort of irritates me. And so I got all excited when I saw this, I think it was Ghost BSD. That's got this XFCE version. I said, I've got to try that out. And then when I installed the thing, I was doing it in an QEMU. And I couldn't get a screen resolution of greater than 1024 by 768. No matter what I did. I tried so many different combinations of things. I couldn't get it to work. So I thought, well, it seems to be fine. It's great and all good. But the screen resolution irritates me. But give it another few weeks or months, that'll be sorted as well. So my future is definitely Linux for many years to come still. But I am getting very interested in the OpenBSD and FreeBSDs out there. I mean, I wrote an application a couple of months ago. I call it CryoZerk. I couldn't think of a better name at this stage.
Sounds cool.
We came up with Bluetooth, so I came up with CryoZerk. Yeah. So it's this thing. It's all about encrypting stuff, and you can stick stuff on the web, and it's all encrypted, and you can do backups. It's perfectly safe. But this isn't trying to sell that. Well, it's free, so it's not for sale. But okay, so it's not trying to sell that. But by pure chance, I did a OpenBSD installation today as well, just to see what it's like now and so forth. And I installed it, and I thought, you know what? I want to see if CryoZerk will run on it because CryoZerk is multi-platform, so it's written in Rust, and it works on any distro of Linux that I've tried so far. I've tried many, which you expect. It should work. If it works on one, it will work on all of them. So it's Linux, Mac OS, Windows, and OpenBSD and FreeBSD. Now, the BSD ones, I've only tried the client because it consists of a client and the server. And then today I decided on OpenBSD, let's install the server. And then as an addition to the server, you've got the option of using MongoDB for persistence as your database. And I thought, well, all right, let's stick on MongoDB onto this OpenBSD as well. But I had no idea how to get MongoDB onto this thing. And I finally figured out, and I started downloading and doing the installation. I saw, but hang on a second. This is like version 3.3 or something like that. Whereas it's already on version 4.4, 4.5 or something. So I was like, oh, I wonder if this is going to work. But I've let the installation complete. I started up my server, and everything just worked as it is. So just by pure luck and happiness, I wrote this program. I tried it in OpenBSD, and it just worked.
Wow.
Brilliant.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So what I'm saying is for me to do a switch over, well, I shouldn't say a switch, but to concurrently use Linux and OpenBSD I don't think it's going to be for me much of an issue, because a lot of the things that I need will run on both. That's why I was saying XFC just now, because this installation of what is it now again? Ghost BSD, that I used the XFCE one, and it was XFCE. It worked. It was XFCE. So yeah, that's all I got to say on that. So I'm still, I love my Linux, and I'm going to stick with it. But I am going to be investigating things such as BSD.
That's cool. Yeah, I like some of the words you use are the same in English and Afrikaans. So I was like, it's like "stol," right?
Still is. Yeah, but
it's the same.
They mean different things, though.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
It just
So "stil" in Afrikaans is quiet.
Ah, yeah.
So "bly stil" means keep quiet.
What is it?
Bly, BLY.
Yeah.
It means to stay or keep.
Like bly stil.
Ek bly daar. I live there, or I stay there. So bly means stay.
Yeah.
Okay. But it can also mean keep. So bly stil is keep quiet.
That is I like learning languages. Afrikaans is like, it just sounds so cool.
It does actually. I've actually tried to sometimes switch off because I don't want to hear. I don't want to interpret what's being said. I just want to listen to the language.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting, smooth, flowing kind of language. Very interesting.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, so I was
No, they do say it's probably the most florally beautiful language in the world, because you can use very few words to describe absolutely amazing things. It's very expressive, extremely expressive. It's a beautiful language. It really is.
Yeah,
but I don't know if it's going to be a mainstay language in South Africa for, is it going to be around in 100 years' time?
You never know. Right?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe.
Like,
the whole world, moving over, start talking English and so forth.
Yeah.
Afrikaans people typically speak Afrikaans only socially nowadays.
Yeah,
but
not
business-wise, it's
business
English.
Stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah, but English is, is pretty much a trade language in a lot of, anyone does business with,
Yeah, most
West,
definitely. Yeah. I've been saying that as well. Yeah, and a lot of people actually got upset with me when I said that, like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and I said, like, guys, you're gonna have to learn English.
Yeah.
No, we speak that. No, you're gonna have to learn English. And now they all speak English.
Well, I was kind of curious about it because I discovered your content on YouTube, and you cover like a whole lot of stuff from software to just all kinds of interesting things. But I was wondering what tools you use, like as far as to create your content, and do you do that? You do that on Linux?
I'm on Linux. So my main operating system is in Endeavour OS, which is an Arch system. Okay. My desktop environment, like I said, is CE. Actually, this is a reasonably fresh install. I think it's about 2 months ago. I think I stuck it on. But for my video content creation is way back. I used to use OBS. I didn't know any better, anything else to use. I used OBS a little bit. It irritated me a little bit. I thought it's a bit heavy for what I'm actually trying to do. And then by pure chance, I came across, what is this thing called? It's either Simple Screen Recorder or Easy Screen Recorder, Simple Screen Recorder. So I came across Simple Screen Recorder, and I found that, because all I really want to do is record my desktop and my voice. Not a video of me, because the reason for that is my hardware. I didn't have a good camcorder. So I thought I'm gonna have to don't record, in other words, my face. Yeah. So I don't need OBS, in other words. I just want something easy just to capture my screen, and that's what this I forget the name again. What does it?
Simple Screen Recorder.
Simple Screen Recorder does. Yeah. So I use Simple Screen Recorder, Audacity, and KDN Live.
Very cool. Yeah.
That's basically what I use.
It's so common. Like, yeah, I've asked other people, and they've, that's pretty simple screen recorder, Kdenlive. These are like not
So
that.
Kdenlive, Audacity. I mean,
yeah,
I've known about or I've been using Audacity since. Gosh, I actually can't remember. As far back as I can remember, I've used Audacity. So if I say to you, since the year 2000, maybe they weren't around then. But I can't even remember when I started. I've always, on Windows, I used Audacity for years. So, I tried OpenShot at a stage, but I prefer my Kdenlive. And there's many things, or many features that software packages have, but I find I don't need all these features. So I'm pretty sure there's better things out there than the three I just mentioned now. There must be better stuff. But I don't need those other features. Yeah. It's like saying to me, you know what, you need to write a website, okay? Just a very basic website. It's just going to ask you your age or your name, and then it's going to do an alert and say you entered and this is your name, all right? And then I'm going to say, oh, cool, great. I'm going to go and write that in Rust. And you say, no, you don't want to write this in Rust. Okay, no, C. No, dude, HTML. That's all you need to do. JavaScript, Oh, okay. So all these extra fancies, just because they're there, maybe if they're there and they're easy to use, I'll grow into that and start using it. But at the moment, I don't really find anything missing out of, like I say, a simple screen recorder, Audacity, and Kdenlive.
Yeah. I'm on board with that idea. Use the simplest tool to get the job done that you want to do.
Exactly. Like, what do they say about programming? Fewer lines of I can't think of the exact words now, but the less lines of code there are, the fewer bugs there will be.
Yeah, that's true.
So the ultimate perfect program consists of no code.
No bugs, right? No problems.
No bugs.
Yeah, I know. Certainly, if you're programming and you're doing something very specific, you want to use the simplest and with the fewest lines of code. But as far as like application stuff, sometimes it is hard to know if there's a simpler solution out there, unless you just want to make something yourself, I guess.
Yeah, but that's actually very true what you're saying. So I often want to make this video, but I haven't done it yet. It was basically two videos, but this is why I haven't made it yet. So I was thinking about combining them into one, but I can't decide. So my question is why do people get so religious about their operating system? And the same thing is, why do people get so religious about their programming language? Okay, so the thing is, if you don't understand that, like certain operating systems, okay, well, the unmentionable ones we won't mention, but like for instance, let's take Ubuntu versus Arch, right? I will not stick Arch on a server as a server operating system. I'd rather stick Ubuntu on, all right? The whole rolling release thing and so on, I don't want that on my server.
Yeah, it could be dangerous.
Yeah.
Unstable.
So, but Arch has got its place as well, because maybe in some cases you do want the latest stuff immediately. All right. So you choose why you install which one, and the programming languages are the exact same. If somebody comes along and says they want to rewrite Windows Notepad, okay, you don't go and write the thing in assembler.
Nice.
Since it's Windows Notepad, it's Windows, you might as well open up Visual Studio, open up C#, WinForms app, spend half an hour, boom, done. There's Notepad. Hour, there's Notepad. Even though a guy that knows assembler can say to you, I could have done an assembler and I would have direct access to it and it's much faster. And why do you need super speed when all you're doing is typing text? What for, Yeah. So use the tool for the job. So when somebody comes along and says, look, C is the best, that is just it, or Rust is the best, or Go, or whatever. For a particular use case it is, yes. But not for everything. That's why it's so difficult to come across, one language that's good at everything. Now, I will say this about C#. It is a brilliant language. I do think it's been muddied a bit the last few years, But the basic idea behind C# is brilliant. And I mean, what's his name? Anders Helsberg. He was at Borland, actually. He moved over to Microsoft and started working on the creation of C#. So, I mean, it comes from a good brain and so forth that figured C# out. And it's really, really good. But it's not C. And just because it has a C in it, don't compare it to C. Yeah. Yes, you can compare it because there's squiggly braces inside there. But that's about it. And Rust also has squiggly braces. Well, does that mean it's similar to C++ or C# or Java? No, they each fit into their own, their own use case. So coming along and saying this is the best in the world, depends what you want to write.
Yeah, I'm like I've said before, I'm not really a developer programmer, but if I am going to make something, I just, I choose the absolute simplest, most basic thing that I can find to get it done because, I don't know. I don't want to. There's no reason to get a whole bunch of stuff going.
Well, you see, so there's the other side as well. So if somebody knows C, for instance, so extremely well,
yeah,
they are so well versed that they can code C faster than JavaScript. All right, then they might have if you come to that person and say, well, I need you to write the following, and a good solution would have been JavaScript, let's say now, all right, and then this guy, you as the person that's saying, I want the following written, you mention the fact that JavaScript will be a good fit, but they don't respond in any way. They say, okay, you want the following written, and you want it when? In 3 days' time. Okay, cool. He goes back, sits at home. He or she starts typing this thing out. 1 day later, they're finished. They come show you the app, and it works brilliantly. And they give you the source code because you purchased it, and it's yours, and off you go. And but you don't look at the source code as long as your app works. 6 months later, you want to make a slight change, and you get a web developer to come along, that you use their JavaScript skills and do an update, and boom, they find out it was never written in JavaScript; it was written in C. Well, there's a third thing we've touched on now about which is the right language to use. But what I'm getting at is, if somebody is extremely well versed in a certain language, then sometimes it's better to use that language to create some solution, versus taking the time to learn something new and so forth. But I mean, when you're dealing with big business, I mean, the company I work for now, I'm trying to get Rust in, and even assembler. But I keep saying, we can't. This is not to replace like websites and stuff. That's not what you use those languages for. But there are cases where they could be used. But the problem is, and this is a very valid issue, I'm the only one in the company that knows Rust. All right, so I die, and I'm halfway through writing some amazing project. Okay, who's going to continue with it? I've only heard of one other Rust developer in South Africa. Now, I'm pretty sure there's 1,000 or whatever, okay? But what I mean is, I've only physically heard from someone else that they know a Rust developer. So that's me, and then through somebody, I've heard that there's another one. It's like Linux as well, for instance, here in South Africa. You'll hear of somebody that exists, but I've never met them, spoken to them, seen them. You just hear of someone.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it's like in the States where you guys.
It's not too dissimilar, I guess. I mean, yeah, I don't know. The as far as like meeting people that actually use Linux, it's pretty rare, honestly. It's pretty rare.
Okay, so it's a worldwide thing when it comes to Linux. Yeah. I mean, that's what I was saying many years ago. Why? I mean, I used OS2. I coded in OS2 back in 1990, I think 1994. Yeah, I coded in OS2, and then a little while after that, actually, it was 94 because OS2 version 3 Warp was coming out as a competitor to Windows 95. All right, and I was saying back then, since then, the reason Windows became actually the big name and not OS2, for instance, is Microsoft's marketing. Absolutely brilliant marketing. And they would say like back, I don't know what it was like anywhere else in the world, but like in South Africa, IBM made a point. If you copy OS2, all right, and they catch you, they will take you to court. You will be fined. Microsoft said, yeah, you'll be fined, but they never did anything. So everyone knew, okay, well, go make a copy of Windows because nothing will happen to you. But that was a brilliant move on their side, because what happened is most people got to know Windows, and they would tell their bosses, or they would tell us youngsters will tell the parents. Okay, well, I was too old in the 90s to be one of those youngsters, but let's take somebody that was 15 in 1995. They start getting introduced to Windows 3.1, then Windows 95, and so forth. And by the time they seek employment, let's say in the year 2000, they will be telling their boss and so forth, oh, you should be running Windows. They can give reasons why, because they've been using themselves for 5, 6, 7 years. And boom, Microsoft got into business now. And now businesses are using Windows. And it just progressed from there. And no one ever really questioned, well, is it the best choice? It's just, well, everyone's using Windows. It's like Office, Microsoft Office. I mean, who uses all the features in Office? Well, very, very few people. You don't need to purchase Microsoft Office just to write basic letters and a nice spreadsheet, and you can do all those things in LibreOffice. Free, and it runs on Windows. Why are you going to buy Office 365 or whatever? I might just say one thing. When I do say that, I found out something the other day. Microsoft has something what they call their Graph API. And that allows you to use or to communicate via the web. So doing JSON calls and so forth, and REST calls, all right? You can actually update a cell in an Excel spreadsheet on the other side of the world by using Graph API. I thought that was the first time I thought that, okay, Office is good, because that is an amazing feature. That is really amazing. So you can send email and all sorts of stuff. That is really good. So they created this entire API that you can communicate and actually update documents and all sorts of things from all over the world, and that is good. But I still won't buy it. But I thought that was nice.
And I think maybe back to your point, other than obviously business or something like that, international business or whatever. I mean, the majority of people that are using it aren't going to be focused in on that feature. They won't need it. Yeah.
No, 100%. Big business will, but
yeah, absolutely.
For the normal person, I mean, I can use Office for free. For the company I work with, I can use it. But I don't. I use LibreOffice. That's what I work on. Yeah, that's what I do. It's, yeah.
Yeah, what is
But even, you were mentioning Skype earlier. I almost installed Skype so that I can chat to you and so forth. Then I thought, but hang on, I've got Microsoft Teams running.
Oh, yeah, Teams.
It's an Electron app. Sorry, that you asked me about languages and so forth. So I did Electron stuff as well. Electron is basically the Chrome web browser, and you can stick in, WebAssembly and JavaScript and HTML and all that sort of stuff inside there. So, for instance, like Telegram, WhatsApp, all those clients, Microsoft Teams, that's all Electron.
Yeah.
Heavy on RAM, but
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize those were Electron.
Yeah, no, those are all Electron. And so when I wanted to install Skype, and I was reading up on installing Skype on Arch, because I don't like installing stuff just for fun. So I want to make sure I install the exact right versions and all that sort of stuff. That's from using Windows for so many years. If you install rubbish, Windows slows down to a standstill. Yeah. So I got in that habit. I don't like installing stuff for fun, or just for the hell of it. So I looked at Teams, then I realized, I started reading up that you can use Teams to connect to Skype, because Teams is basically just Skype. The video side of it is just Skype on steroids. So it makes sense you can speak to Skype. But actually, I'm sort of running off here. I'm rambling on. You asked me a question,
it's okay.
but I can't remember what it was now. but yeah, so Teams is also an Electron app. There's quite a few. The great thing about Electron is it's multi-platform. It runs anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah,
but it is RAM heavy.
I just have one. I've only made one Electron app, and I exported it to work on 64-bit, 32-bit Linux, then the ARM stuff for Linux, and then Windows as well. Okay. And it's just a chat app that I made for my cousin, But it's an Electron, and I just made it into an app image, so I can just download and run it. But
you see that you brought up something interesting there is app images. I do love app images.
They're great. Yeah, absolutely.
My very, very first video I made is just a little couple of months after I got out of hospital. It's also the only video of me where there's a recording of me in the bottom right-hand corner. So I was making it on a laptop, but it's my first video was how to install Nextcloud 16 without using Snap packages. Because I was anti-Snap back then, and to a degree I am today as well. But app images, I absolutely love it. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. I mean, it's amazing. Like, there hasn't been one system that I've tried this. I didn't do a multi. It's not a what do you call that? Multi-architecture. I have a. I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I made a. I think I did a 64-bit and a 32-bit app image, but there's not been one of my systems that I've tried the app image on where it doesn't just work. And it's like it's great.
That's the thing. It just works. It's brilliant. Yeah.
And that paired with Electron, it's like the perfect small little package of just everything you need. It just works.
So. But there are guys out there that I've come across it a lot in forums and so forth where they just I will not use Electron apps because the one side is because it's basically Chromium.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chromium, it's Google and Chromium, so they worry about I don't like that. And the other thing is that it's definitely very RAM hungry. It uses a lot of RAM.
But like
there are tricks that you can do.
Yeah, I don't know.
There are tricks that you can do to drop the RAM, but there's not much you can do. You write something very, very basic, and then you think like, well, if this was written even in C#, well, okay, that's a bad example. But something like C or Rust or whatever, then you say, okay, well, the binary will be 100K. Yeah. And then you go and look at the Electron one, and it's 150 meg.
That's true.
But it's because of the whole browser's there.
Yeah. Well, my thing is like it's back to like what is the simplest, like easiest thing to do, and I could have gone with like GTK web app or Qt or something like that, but this one was just simple. I was like I didn't want to spend too much time on it because I'm really the only one using the desktop version of it because I did like an Android app and all that kind of stuff too, but it was just like the simplest thing to just get it done, and probably not the best on resources, but whatever, it works. I
often hear people say like, oh, who cares about 100 meg when you've got 32 gig RAM or whatever. Yeah, well, sure, who cares? But it's also the principle. If people don't keep programmers more honest, and so these things don't get too big and bloated. Then we're forcing ourselves that, in 25 years' time, we're each going to have a petabyte of RAM because, Notepad is half a gig in size. It's you got to try and optimize it and keep it small and simple. And well, it's faster and it's typically less code as well, like we said, and therefore less bugs.
Yeah.
So try and keep things small and lightweight and quick.
Well, my thing is like this isn't like as far as my stuff, I didn't make it to be distributable to people. It just goes right to my server.
Then of course,
so I don't care.
It doesn't matter. I've done stuff like that as well. Like I wrote something very interesting I found today actually. So I wrote for Windows a background desktop background switcher. Because on my website, Dimension 15, if you go into the menu, there's free stuff and blah blah. You can get onto a page that I quickly did. It's not pretty, but very quickly, and there's almost 2,000 desktop backgrounds that you can download there. And so what I wanted to do is, for fun, write a desktop background changer that sits in the sys tray of Windows, and all it does is it'll go and fetch images off from our website, off the web. Well, it can be anywhere on the web though, but gets them off the web, and then we'll update the desktop background. But then you've got the option of moving backwards in history. So, I actually like the previous desktop because it switches every, I think it was 2 hours or whatever. I didn't make that. It's not configurable yet. Okay, you can't change it to 15 minutes or whatever. That's version 2. But what I'm getting at is, so again, I can't remember what exactly we're talking about. But so I wrote this quick desktop switcher. Now, when I installed Windows 11, I didn't activate it. All right, I didn't have an activation key for it. So I said no. Now the thing with that is with Windows, then you can't do customizations. You can't change to a dock, a theme. You can't change the desktop background and that stuff. And the funny thing is, this app of mine, I thought I'll try it just for fun and see what happens. And it actually changes the desktop backgrounds in unactivated Windows, just by sheer chance. But I think what made me think about this is you were saying just now, you sort of wrote it for yourself and whatever.
Yeah.
Well, that I also just wrote very quickly. It's just for me to play around with. So I didn't, you're supposed to, before you write something, really think about what you're going to write, figure out a good kernel to it, and then start working off of that. This, I just wrote a couple of lines of code, and I thought, it works. It will be nice. Let's add this, and I just add it. I didn't, remove things or change things. So I didn't think it through. I just added the code as is, and it works. But yeah, the interesting thing is it'll change unactivated Windows 11's desktop background.
That's cool. Yeah.
But no special work. It just by testing it, hey, the background changed. That's amazing.
It works.
Some hole Microsoft didn't close again.
Yeah. Yeah, again, right. Hey, maybe you can do it remotely too. You can change the background remotely. You're like, wow, it works this way too. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, is there wow, oh my goodness, we're coming up on almost 2 hours here. Is there any other topics that we didn't cover that you would like to cover?
Well, there's a million things we can talk about, but we can't keep going down the rabbit hole. No, I think it's more you that interviewed me. So I don't know if there's something you wanted to still ask me, maybe.
Well, I guess just I don't know. You're at IT and the Likes on YouTube, right?
Yes.
And so, what is your website? One more time.
So it's Dimension, DIMENSION 15.co.za. I'm also on Odyssey. I see on your webpage you had a library on Odyssey link there as well. Yes. So I started on library way back, and then Odyssey came out. So I'm on Odyssey /@Dimension 15.
Okay. Yeah, I was impressed when they went from the app to the browser. It's like, cool, you can access from the browser.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, what irritated me about the app, though, is it took over my association to anything HTML. So any HTML file I open or a CSS file, anything I open, it'll always open this library client. And then I'd even go and I would change those settings.
Really?
And, nope, it'll open up the library client. And I just thought, you know what? It must be something small and silly. Yeah. But I'm not going to be installing the client again.
Yeah,
and then I found, I can use it on the web, the library client on the web.
Yeah.
Basically the exact same as if it was the actual client. And then now with Odyssey, I'm not in library that much anymore. I'm basically just in Odyssey.
Yeah, no, same here. And I think it's a shared network, so it goes on to both either way. So
yeah.
All right. Well, that was fun. That was a fun talk.
Yeah, that was actually quite fun. I enjoyed that.
All right. Yeah. Well, maybe we could talk. We'll do it again sometime if you have free time.
Yeah, no, I'd be cool with that. Just not because I want to vet it or anything, but would I be able to get a copy of this video from you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I may not have time to. I was actually planning to work on these today, the interview stuff, but I may not actually have time to do it today, so it may be tomorrow before I can actually get it over to you. But I'll send it to you.
No rush. Whenever you get to it, if you can just, it'd be great if you could.
Absolutely.
That'd be really nice. Yeah, well, great, Matt. I actually enjoyed talking to you. Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Chat again. See you, man. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can join me on Locals at LibreQuest.locals.com, where I'll be posting exclusive interviews, some of my music, and other things, and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about as well. For other ways to support me, you can visit LibreQuest.org, that's LibreQuest.org, and thank you for being a listener. Until next time, I'm Matt, and this is LibreQuest.